An older 13th century chapel. In the chapel there is an old well into which people threw coins and prayers. We're back up in the newer chapel, and this is the original entrance. This is a beautiful lamp, but the light bulbs leave a little bit to be desired. Of course, there's the obligatory image of St. George slaying the dragon. This has the Pope riding side saddle on the back. John the Baptist has two heads as a portent of his impending loss. Here we have a beautiful old pulpit. This is the courtyard of the monastery, and there's a little shop selling souvenirs, and it was run by a very friendly priest. We like this old car sitting outside, this Pontiac, with this chrome Indian head. As we left St. George, we could see in the distance the famous Crusader castle, Crac des Chevaliers, looming over the valleys below. The original fortress had been built in 1031. During the First Crusade in 1099, it was captured by Raymond IV of Toulouse. The entrance is typical of the other fortresses of this era. Narrow passageways with many turns, making it easy to defend. Holes in the ceiling let in light, and also were used by defenders for dropping large rocks on invaders. You can see the moat between the outer wall and the massive inner wall. Parts of the castle appear to be ready to fall down. This is one of the serpentine corners. Pretty hard to rush a bunch of troops around that in a hurry. We finally arrive in the open, where there are surprisingly delicate Norman windows in the chapel. And this is Faisal, our very amiable driver. The incredible amount of stonework that went into this structure is truly awe-inspiring. Here we have Sandra in the chapel wearing a scarf because the wind was so strong that it almost blew us off the walls of the castle. People were obviously very short in those days. This is the understructure to the courtyard in the center of the castle. It was fun wandering around through this somewhat labyrinth-like area. We're looking down from one of the towers into the valley far below. Another view of the moat with Lebanon in the far distance there. You can see the chapel with its Norman arches, and above it, in the distance, is the Maiden's Tower. It has an incredibly narrow staircase winding up to the roof. This is another view into the valley through gaps in the wall. You can walk along the outer walls, or in the space between the outer wall and the inner wall, where there is no moat at this time. You can see just how huge this fortress is. In spite of changing hands many times throughout history, its walls were never breached. This is the typical crack shot. Lawrence of Arabia said this was the most perfect castle he had ever seen. Faisal took us back to Hama, and the next day we were off to Palmyra, with the bus driver smoking, talking on the cell phone, shifting gears, and steering with his elbow. We changed bus in Homs. This pile of shawarma behind the server is about the largest I have ever seen. Palmyra was in ancient times an important city of central Syria, located in an oasis 215 kilometers from Damascus. This gives us an idea of the extent of the city. It has long been a vital caravan crossroads for travelers crossing the Syrian desert and was known as the Bride of the Desert. The most striking part of these extensive Roman ruins is the monumental arch. The main street, which is over a kilometer long, makes a 30-degree bend at this point. The earliest documented reference to the city is recorded in Babylonian tablets. Most of what remains today was put there by the Romans in the 2nd century AD. Zenobia was a 3rd century Syrian queen who took over the Palmyrene Empire when the king, her husband, mysteriously died, possibly poisoned by her. She conquered Egypt and expelled the Roman prefect, and then had the audacity to strike her own coinage. She was eventually defeated by the Romans and attempted to flee the Romans on a camel. They caught her and brought her to Rome, where they paraded her in golden chains. She impressed the Romans so much that they freed her, and she became an important member of Roman society. We are not sure if these columns were set up again by the people reconstructing parts of the ruins or survived the earthquakes that occurred over the centuries. This is one of the main intersections. There is only a couple pillars that are original, but the tops are original. The main street is lined with columns, each of which has a ledge for the bust of whatever citizen paid to put that column up. The city had a sewer system made of hollowed-out blocks of stone that were fitted together to make a pipe. There is an Arab castle high on the hill overlooking the ruins. Toward the other end of the main street is a funerary temple, one of the most beautiful house tombs in Palmyra. In the hill behind the temple is a cave with 4 large sarcophagi. Lying around all over the site are pieces of beautiful carving. This was a funerary tower in which bodies were placed. Oops, we've come across Queen Zenobia as she sunbathed. After the heat of the desert, we retired to a ruin-side restaurant for refreshments. We returned that evening for dinner. The food was so good, to say nothing of the view. This is one of the few well-fed cats in Syria, as the patrons always seem to give it scraps of meat. The Temple of Baal is a huge stone box with a massive gate before it. Between the gate and the entrance is this beautifully carved block of stone. I had to place the camera on the ground to photograph the carvings on the bottom, well preserved because they are sheltered from the wind. This is one end of the inside